Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can shop online and get easy delivery or free pickup. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Shop the weekly ad, clip deals, and earn points at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
The Denver Zoo is getting ready to say goodbye to one of its biggest personalities. Mahali, the Nile hippo, has been delighting guests since he was born at the zoo in 2002, whether that be by splashing around or showing off his classic hippo poop spray. Delightful. This fall, he's moving to a roomy wildlife preserve in Texas, so the zoo can do maintenance on his current habitat. If you want to say goodbye to Mahali, you still have a few months to swing by. Just be careful about the poop. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, some of Colorado's gun laws aren't really working like they're supposed to.
We found that police rarely follow up on these denials.
What happens when someone who can't own a gun tries to buy one?
Then, it can feel a little bit like winning the lottery when your name comes up in Colorado's unclaimed property fund.
That money's been there for years, and it's just sitting there and collecting interest rates.
Hear about Colorado's huge amount of unclaimed cash and other valuables.
Plus, there's somebody new at the helm of our history.
Part of my goal is to place Colorado into that larger story.
It's Monday, August 4th. Here's the news in Colorado Today.
Each day in Colorado, nearly 14 people who should not legally own a gun try to buy one anyway. They're flagged by the background check system for having a felony conviction or domestic violence charges or a history of mental illness or because they're in the country without legal status. Those denials could offer law enforcement valuable information about who might be a danger in the state. But as CPR's Allison Sherry has learned, they're rarely followed up on. Allison is here now. Allison, if someone tries to buy a gun and gets denied, what then? Who finds out about it?
Yeah, this is all electronic. There's a computer system. It's called InstaCheck. It instantly alerts police and sheriff's departments across Colorado when there's a gun purchase that's denied in their area. It's essentially like a few lines of information: person's name, the date they tried to buy a gun, where they tried to buy a gun, and really, most importantly, why that purchase was denied. Like, was it an outstanding warrant? Is it someone who has an active restraining order? But we found that police rarely follow up on these denials. I don't even think they were looking at them. There's so many coming in, and they just it's just one of those things that was getting discarded, even though it is technically a crime to try to buy a gun when you're not allowed to. So prosecutors and state lawmakers have been trying to get the Colorado Bureau of Investigation more involved in investigating these denials. It even last year gave CBI $1.4 million of extra money for this purpose. But CBI acknowledges it's been a little slow to adopt a way to flag and follow up on all these rejected gun purchases. And in the last 12 months, they say they've investigated 92 people who are denied firearm purchases in Colorado, and that led to about 30 arrests statewide. So, like I said, out of 5,000 denials, it's still a pretty small percentage.
You spoke with some people who are concerned about this. How do they think this information should be used?
Well, I think prosecutors and advocates, state lawmakers say at the bare minimum, these little denials should be treated like a red flag. It will say they have an outstanding warrant. It might be kind of helpful if law enforcement knew that someone with a warrant is trying to buy a gun. It could point officers to people in the state who might bear further scrutiny before granted access to sensitive jobs in areas like hospitals or law enforcement or national security work.
You started looking into this issue after the firebomb attack in Boulder. That's when it came out that the suspect in that case, Mohammed Suleiman, had tried to buy a gun and had been flagged because of his immigration status, but no one followed up in that case.
In many ways, his gun purchase denial highlights both the strengths and the weaknesses of Colorado's system. He had been planning this firebombing attack in Boulder for a year, according to law enforcement. Last November, he tried to purchase a handgun at a Colorado Springs gun store to carry out this attack. He was flagged as someone without legal status in this country. He's on an expired visa. And that in Colorado disqualifies you from owning a gun. And within minutes, the Department of Homeland Security and both law enforcement agencies in Colorado Springs were told about Suleiman's rejection via InstaCheck. But nobody really acted on that or even really made note of that attempted gun purchase. And the same thing happened a month later when he applied unsuccessfully for a concealed carry permit in El Paso County.
He was denied twice. How do you see this case as an example of strengths and shortcomings, of what's working and what doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, the strength is he was blocked from buying a gun. The shortcoming, obviously, is that nothing happened. You know, he was making these public signs, filling out public documents to law enforcement anyway, that he was interested in buying a weapon, and no one did anything.
Do you think there's any momentum for any of this to change?
Yeah, I mean, there are 23 prosecutors in the state, and a lot of them say they want more cases. They want more fulsome investigations from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation about these gun purchase denials and whether they should prosecute people who are trying to buy guns when they know they shouldn't be. Here is Jefferson County District Attorney Alexis King.
Like, you are the state, so get your resources together and figure out if this person is on, a DOC website, for Christ's sakes.
And I'll just say DOC is the Department of Corrections, which is like a reference to if you're a prior felon and you've served time in prison, you can't go buy a gun afterwards.
So King very clear there that she wants more of these background check denials to be investigated. Does anyone really oppose that?
You know, there's some pushback on how important of an enforcement priority it should be for law enforcement agencies. Last year, when there were people debating about whether to put more resources into this, there were a few sheriffs from conservative counties who testified that, digging into everyone who's been rejected from buying a gun kind of vilifies people who may not be planning anything nefarious. And generally speaking, if they get denied, the system is working and everybody should just move on.
CPR Justice reporter Allison Sherry. Thanks, Allison.
You're welcome, Buzzy.
There's a vault tucked away at the state capitol building that's packed with lost treasures belonging to generations of Coloradans. Some of it could even be yours.
We get a lot of coins, and these are gold coins. Then this is our yellow diamond. I think it's 6.4 carats to be exact.
Wow, that's a large diamond, and it's sitting in state custody as part of an unclaimed property fund that's valued at around $2 billion. State lawmakers have had their eye on those assets. Public affairs reporter Benta Birkeland has seen the vault. Benta, what's it like in there?
Well, I did get to peer in. I couldn't step inside. But if you're thinking 007, sorry to say it's not like that. It's a room the size of a pretty large storage closet, a big metal door, and you can imagine tight security. And the inside is lined with white boxes that are labeled and stacked on top of each other.
We've mentioned coins and jewels. What else is in those boxes?
When I was there, they showed off some of the valuable items: gold and silver bars, a war medal, a Byzantine gold and garnet necklace from the 5th to 6th century AD. And they do get some weird items as well, which I didn't get to see, like gold teeth.
Valuable to someone, I'm sure.
Yes. And these physical objects were found in safety deposit boxes. Most unclaimed property, though, isn't old treasures. It's usually things like abandoned bank accounts and unclaimed tax refunds. After a certain amount of time, a bank or other entity turns those types of funds that have been sitting dormant over to the state as unclaimed.
So what is the state's obligation at that point?
It's supposed to find the rightful owners. The state treasury department is tasked with this job, but it turns out it can be pretty challenging. And part of that is actually convincing owners that this whole thing is legit. I spoke with Bianca Gardelli. She works for the treasurer's office, and she oversees the contents of this unclaimed property fund. She says one time the state had $50,000 from a life insurance policy. The beneficiary lived in Georgia, and Gardelli tried over and over again to get a hold of her.
And she's like, "You're lying, stop calling me. This is against the law to call me." She thought I was obviously not someone to depend on.
Whatever happened to that life insurance money? Was she able to convince the woman in Georgia?
Yes, this woman did get the money. Colorado does try to make it user-friendly to get money back to people. So from the treasurer's website, you can search a public database for your name. I actually did that when I was researching this story. I found out I was owed about $200. I typed in some personal information, got a confirmation email just a few minutes later, and that check is on its way.
You know, Benta, I've done that too. But from what I've heard from others, it's not always that easy.
It's definitely not, especially for older items with many living heirs. Only one person can make the claim. Or for instances that require more documentation. There are people who think the state is making people jump through too many hurdles.
You've reported, Benta, that state lawmakers have been eyeing the fund as they face difficult state budget decisions. Are they able to do that, to dip into the unclaimed property fund?
Yes, they can. And since 2009, the state has used more than $600 million from the fund to pay for all sorts of programs. Last session, Democratic Representative Junie Joseph had a bill that would have borrowed $50 million from the fund for energy efficiency measures.
The money belongs to the people, but that money's been there for years, and it's just sitting there and collecting interest rates, and all we were doing is borrowing some of it so that we can further our decarbonization goals, and we're going to return that money back.
Borrowing from the fund. What does the state treasurer think of that?
Treasurer Young pushed back on it, and ultimately the bill failed. He's just very skeptical when lawmakers say, hey, we just want a loan.
The dilemma we get into is the legislature really serious about paying the money back, or is this just kind of a facade to, kind of get over a tough funding situation? And in fact, maybe it never gets paid back.
And state economists project significant budget shortfalls in the coming years. So I think we can expect to see more attempts to tap into this money to try and pay for things that could face cuts and that lawmakers feel are critical. As the treasurer likes to point out, though, this money does already belong to someone, and it's not the state.
And if any of those someones are hearing this story, hopefully they can go and claim it. Thanks, Benta.
Thanks so much.
The Unclaimed Property Fund is also the subject of the latest episode of Purplish. We have a link to that and to the websites where you can check for your unclaimed property in the show notes.
This is the first week on the job for Colorado's new state historian. Susan Schulten told us about her vision for the role.
I'm a historian of the United States. I'm deeply interested in Colorado, and part of my goal is to place Colorado into that larger story, whether it's regional, national, or beyond.
Schulten taught at the University of Denver for decades, and for the next year, she'll help shape the stories that we tell about our state. And one thing we can expect to hear a lot about, maps.
I think when you look at maps of things like the goldfields, what you're really seeing is promotion and propaganda.
Schulten wrote a book about using maps as a tool of power and persuasion. It's called A History of America in 100 Maps. With so much navigation on our phones these days, in real time, it is easy to forget that maps can tell us a lot about history. And not all of it is good.
In the earlier 19th century, American-made maps of what we understand to be North America and the future extent of the United States, they liberally acknowledge the tribes. The tribes are robust, allies, threats, they're all kinds of things, but they're not erased. But over time, as the interior becomes something not just to cross, but something to pay closer attention to in and of itself, you gradually do see an erasure, and in this case, an erasure of the Arapaho and the Cheyenne.
Schulten looks at maps the way that the rest of us might look at an old photo, and it's something unique that she'll bring to the job.
It's a highly visual way of opening new portals onto the past. You look for yourself in some way on the map, whether that's your hometown or something which is more deeper and even lyrical, which is the memories that we hold, right? And the way in which we metaphorically map the world says something about our own priorities and what's meaningful to us.
You can hear the full conversation with our new state historian on the Colorado Matters podcast. Reporting for today's show also came from CPR's Haley Sanchez. Stay in the know about what's happening in your state by following Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can make back to school a breeze. Shop lunch essentials, snacking favorites, and even check off vaccinations all in one trip. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.